Today's story is about motivation and competitiveness. When I think back to my life, very recently I realized that competitiveness was actually making me less happy, which was surprising because there have been many moments of joy from competitiveness as well. When you think about winning a game and that competitive instinct that you have, there's a pure moment of joy. But I realized that when I was motivated by being competitive, I was actually overall having a lower quality of life. And so I started thinking about where that came from. And when I think back to, for example, when I first became a teacher, I remember actually getting a little thrill of joy sometimes, not only when a student told me that I was a great teacher, but also when they told me about another teacher not being as good as me. And that's interesting to think back that I actually felt competitive with other teachers, so much so that I would even have a little bit of joy when they were not doing as good a job. And then when I think about my worst moments, oftentimes they have been on the soccer field. The times when I have been the least like the human being I want to be, when I've been most critical and most negative towards others, is during soccer games when I'm at the height of my competitiveness. Now, sometimes we've been taught in our culture that competition and that drive to succeed is what makes us great. And so I started thinking, is that the only way for me to be great, for me to be who I want to be and to succeed and achieve? And I came to the conclusion that it wasn't the only way. It was the way that my culture taught me, and even my family of origin. I come from a family where succeeding and getting great grades and being a winner were all emphasized as important. So where did that leave me? I ended up in some conversations with my cousin, Jeff, who also came from the same, sort of background of competitiveness. And I was talking to him about how I wanted to no longer use competition as a motivator for myself. And he said, well, what will you use to motivate yourself? And he questioned even himself, wondering if the reason he was successful and had achieved what he had achieved in life was because he had been pushed and told to compete and even given guilt and shame when he didn't succeed. I came to the conclusion that while it is a very successful motivator, guilt and shame and competition, there are other successful motivators as well. And I needed to discover what those were. So here's where I ended up. I believe that motivation for me is actually a two-step process. When I was a kid, the motivator that I think would have been most healthy and yet still incredibly motivating for me would have been the motivation of responsibility. In other words, there is joy in being responsible. There's joy in learning how to do things that you don't particularly want to do so that you can be successful. There's joy in seeing a job well done, even if it was hard. There's joy in seeing the smile in your family's faces when you do well or when you get a good grade. When I was a kid, though, getting good grades was all about proving that I was better than others. In fact, I remember when I got into college and when I got my SAT scores and when I got my GPA, I would often think, oh, I'm a good person. I'm better than other people. Look how much better I'm doing than everybody else. And that was my source of self-esteem. But I don't think that was the healthiest source of self-esteem. I think it would have been much better for me to look at my good grades and look at my scores on tests and say, look what I've achieved by pushing myself to be the best version of myself that I can be. Look at what I've learned about how to have perseverance and to work hard and to do things that I might not want to do, but I know will pay off. Look at how I have made my family members happy and my friends. I'm a good influence and I'm responsible and they don't have to worry about me. There's joy in that. And now that I'm an adult, when I first went into teaching, I motivated myself by saying I wanted to be the best teacher I could be. And sometimes I think that I fell into the trap of saying that in order for me to be the best teacher, I had to be better than other teachers. And I don't feel that way anymore. And in fact, as a soccer player, I used to think that in order for me to be the best soccer player, I had to be better than other soccer players. But it turns out that life is actually a team sport. Just as soccer is a team sport and teaching is a team sport, I believe all things in life can be team activities. So I can work hard on the soccer field because I want to contribute to my team. I can work my tail off and make beautiful passes because I want to be part of a great whole that creates beauty and harmony on the field and maybe has a win as well, but always works hard. I can be a teacher who helps other teachers to improve, not through competition, but by being on a team. And I too can improve by seeing that I'm not perfect and nobody's perfect. So when I think about motivation, I see that it's a two-step process for me. If I want to leave competition and the associated feelings of guilt and shame that come with them, I need to first recognize the motivator of responsibility, how good it feels to be a responsible human being. And secondly, I need that next piece of motivation, which is how am I improving my community and how am I helping others? How am I becoming part of a greater whole? That is motivation that will make me work hard every single day. It will make me work just as hard as proving that I'm better than somebody else. Now, of course, this story is very personal as well, because when I think back to my own father, who was a very intelligent and very kind human being, he did things in his life that hurt other people. And it wasn't from malice or desire to hurt. It was because he didn't have a way to motivate himself and to follow through on things and be responsible in a way that could make other people not have to worry about him. So, for example, I remember even when I was as young as 8 years old, when I would spend the summers with my father, he would go do work or have meetings with people. And when he came back from those meetings, I would ask him, I would say, "Dad, did you remember to ask to get paid?" And that's because my dad spent a lot of his life doing work and never asking for pay. And while that might have been okay for him, and he might have seen that as a really worthwhile philosophy where he was above being paid, it did cause pain to people who were depending on him, like me, his son. And although we were never hungry, there were times where we weren't sure what our housing was going to be. We lived in a camper van over the summer sometimes. And that was great. That was wonderful. I don't mind having done that. But I do realize that at times I felt like there was a lack of security because he was not getting paid. So for my father, perhaps it was because he was raised in a family where his father was an alcoholic and struggled with life. He was not able to learn, in my opinion, or be motivated by that responsibility that I think is so important. Still wonderful, kind, loving man, but he caused problems for others at times. So when I think about motivation, what I am motivated to do is to use another form of motivation, not competition, not guilt, not shame, but instead to replace it with the joy of responsibility and the joy of helping others, which is a gift in and of itself. Thanks.